Chris, I stay next to you.
Roll cameras, please.
61, thank you, Quincy. Speed.
Set and background and action.
Cut. Nice. Cut there.
This is Cinema and the Psyche. Welcome to episode 4, I think. You'd think I should know, it's only a couple I've had so far. But in any case, I think I might drop the numbers. Welcome to this episode of Cinema and the Psyche. These cicadas, I think they might be called, are pretty loud, but I'm going to give it a go. And when I go to edit, hopefully they're not overpowering my voice. So I wanted to talk this time about the process I'm going through on my latest screenplay as a writer. So, although I guess it's going to be most attractive for screenwriters, the general theme or the general process I'm taking, I think, could interest others as well in other pursuits or other aspects of their learning or whatever they're up to. So hopefully it's not too specialized. But I thought it would be interesting because on this last screenplay that I'm doing now, I have approached it in a completely new way. And although I'm just about ready to get into the first draft, meaning I haven't completed a first draft yet, still the process I've used to get where I am and to, finish a first draft and carry on, I really found to be inspiring. And so I want to share it. And it's based on something I came across a couple years ago called the Trivium, which is coming from classical Greek education, the trivium and quadrivium. So the trivium are the 3 topics that you would first learn in a classic education in ancient Greece, I guess. I'm not a big historian, but I know that's where this particular thing comes from. So the first thing you'd learn was the trivium, which is comprised of grammar, logic, and rhetoric. So these are 3 different topics that would be approached that comprise what's called the trivium. And this would be the first thing that would be learned. Now, what's so great about the trivium and adopting this method into your own life is that the trivium is really an education in how to educate yourself, in a sense. So learning the trivium is really what kids should be taught in school. But they're not. They're taught facts and figures and numbers and details that become useless over time. What you really want is to be taught how to most effectively learn any subject so you can approach any subject and just go out and, do it yourself. So the process of learning, so then you can apply it wherever you want. So this trivium begins with grammar. So I'm just going to give a brief summary because it's good enough for understanding the trivium, understanding how to apply it. I know there's more material. There's not a lot of material, but there is material online and in various places that will go into much greater depth. But I find a summary understanding of the topic is sufficient to apply it in a really effective way. So you start with grammar. So basically grammar means, let's say, the definitions or understanding the pieces of a certain subject, just the pieces within themselves. So if you're learning music, the grammar would be the music staff, the scales, chords. Maybe if it's a particular instrument, then the grammar might include what makes up the instrument, like a guitar. So you have the strings E, A, D, G, B, E. You have the pickups, you have the wood that makes up the guitar, or if you're, that might go too far, more in depth than you need. You use a pick, strumming, picking, scales, chords, I said, the music staff for being able to read and write music. So the idea is that the grammar stage is all about getting to grips with and understanding the pieces that make up a certain subject matter. So applying that to my latest screenplay, or rather applying that to screenwriting in general, what it would be is the grammar of your movie. So I have a particular movie. It's a sci-fi. It's kind of like a sci-fi thriller. And I know, I've got the premise. I started, with a premise, an idea. I know roughly what it is I want. I had it before I started the process that I'm talking about. I had it at a one-page synopsis. So I had the idea. I had the core of it. So now the grammar of my film is to break down all of the aspects that are included in the movie. So it might have, artificial intelligence might be a key aspect, or pharmaceuticals, or drugs. Also, the grammar of my film as a subject would include visual storytelling. So to properly understand this movie means initially understand it, making sure you understand the pieces that make it up. So movies are made from visual language. So understanding visual language is a key element in the movie. So you also have, visual language. That includes so much. That includes production design, color, all of those things. Then you also have one of the subject matters I put in my grammar notebook for this movie was the hero's journey, to understand the archetypal journey in storytelling, possibly in life, who knows. So the hero's journey, storytelling itself is a subject matter that is integral to film, so that becomes one of the pieces of the grammar. So you have, the grammar pieces that are general to all movies. They're important. They're in what I did was I've got a couple notebooks, 2.5, 3 notebooks that are my study of and understanding of the grammar of my screenplay. So I broke down all the major aspects, some that are general to all movies, some that are specific to this movie, such as artificial intelligence and other subject matters that are particular to this movie. So before I go at writing this thing, I wanted to make sure and elaborate as fully as possible, or within reason, as to the pieces, the grammar of it, the pieces that make it up. So I filled a number of notebooks with individual studies into the pieces that make up the grammar of the movie. So now I've got a number of notebooks that are like reference material, the reference material specifically for this movie. So these are like the encyclopedia, the dictionary, the reference library for the creation of this thing. So then the second stage in the Trivium is logic. You have grammar, logic, and rhetoric. So the second subject matter of the Trivium is logic, which refers to how are all these pieces to be put together. The logic of it. So in my case, to understand how the pieces need to fit together, I had to understand what is the effect I'm going for. So in the logic stage, I began, obviously there's writers who would rather just get an idea of a character and maybe put them in circumstances and just go with it and let it flow. I guess, different writers approach it in different ways. So, that style of writer is going to feel like I'm some kind of screenplay scientist trying to formulate something, in a laboratory. In any case, I think what we really want to do is figure out the best way to the outcome we desire in our filmmaking, movie creation, cinema. And so I have to say that this has been really inspiring. So I'll stop making excuses and carry on. The logic, what I had to do was, or what I did, was create an outcome statement, which started off as a few pages long. I wrote down everything, basically what I wanted this movie, what effect I wanted this movie to have on the audience. So I look at the end result and I'm like, well, how do I want the audience to feel? What do I want the audience to be thinking when they're leaving the cinema? And so this became like a few pages long of somewhat unrelated paragraphs, about the different things that I want this movie to do. Because how do you know how to arrange the pieces? You can go at it randomly and hope that it comes out well. Or not only that, you can go at it intuitionally and trust that the right thing will happen. I personally, because I'm not like a big writer, I consider myself a director. I'm primarily interested in how to create the outcome. So be clear about the outcome. So I created an outcome statement. I ended up with a number of pages. From there, what I did was I structured all of the ideas and brought it into a concise, maybe one page, a very concise one-page outcome statement. And that guides the process of how best to arrange these pieces that were outlined in the grammar stage. So, from the outcome statement comes a phase of arranging elements together in certain ways, in a certain sequence. If you want a certain emotional outcome, then a certain sequence of elements or events are required. And likewise, with all of the outcomes you desire, there's a way to get them, but to figure out the logic behind it or how you're going to get those effects, first you have to know what the pieces are that you're playing with, and then you have to know what effects you desire. This thing is really loud. I hope it doesn't make my recording useless. So, grammar is required before you get to logic. Logic is required if you want any kind of control over the outcome. So, after understanding the outcome I desire and figuring out how best to arrange the elements I filled these notebooks with for that outcome, which is the logic stage, then comes rhetoric, the third subject of the ancient Greek classical educational system. The third piece of the Trivium is rhetoric, which is the conveying of the subject matter, rhetoric. So, rhetoric, I think, is therefore the actual first draft of the screenplay. So in the logic stage, which is, I'm at the end, in this current process, I'm at the end of the logic stage in the sense that in my last notebook, I am completing a kind of, I guess it's about a 20 to 30 page treatment, I guess you could call it. Really, it's I don't use treatment. What I really do is I go scene by scene. So I simply, if I have at other times, what I would do is I would do an outline. I would have like a one-line description for a scene, and then once I have this outline of sentences which represent a scene each, then I simply expand on those sentences creatively. I simply write the scene as it comes through, spontaneously. So, in a sense, without the outline, what I'm using the logic stage for is how to formulate the characters and the events in such a way that at the end, the audience is left thinking and feeling what I want them to think and feel. And so, therefore, the end of the logic stage is the constructing of a type of outline or a treatment or something basically in the middle, because it's basically a succession of scenes, but not in great depth. So, in a sense, what I've created is something right in the middle. And then the rhetoric stage will be the decision on how that is going to be conveyed in the screenplay. As I make this Cinema and the Psyche podcast, I'm more and more intrigued by the idea that the screenplay is not as important as I always believed it was, simply because the movie is what's important. And so then you get into a discussion about, okay, well, when is the movie made? And some people will say, well, it's made in the editing, or it's made 3 times in the screenplay during production or during editing. Whatever it is, you're making a movie, and the movie is a succession of, or they may overlap, a succession of shots, scenes, sequences, and that's the movie, and that's what you're making. So as time goes by, and especially with this focus on cinema and the psyche, I'm kind of coming more and more toward the idea that everything is malleable. Nothing is locked. Nothing is locked down until the final stage, which is the creation of the movie. And so, although I'm using this Trivium process for the creation of a screenplay, as time goes by, the screenplay is obviously important when you're spending lots of money, but I think you'll see that even with the greatest directors, maybe minus Alfred Hitchcock, I don't know, because I don't know them all. But in general, I've heard many, many directors that I would consider great, and so would history, speak about how malleable things should be during the shooting of the movie, which means you are not locked to the screenplay. And I hear from many directors I respect, not current ones, because my favorite directors largely are 40s, 50s, and then after that come the 70s. Tony Scott, but he kind of stands out as an anomaly of my liking. In general, 40s, 50s, and then 70s. And some of the best, they're very open to script changes during the shooting, being open to surprises, and many of them say that, that the best moments in movies come as surprises or happy accidents. And therefore, you obviously want a screenplay. I wouldn't go so far as to begin shooting a movie with everybody chipping in and no script. I wouldn't do that. There is obviously a delicate balance to be drawn between having a solid blueprint, as well for your producer and, line producer and production manager, etc., and balancing that with the desire to continue allowing intuition and the creative mind to direct the going forward. So that's just a different thing, I guess. What I really wanted to share in this episode was the process I'm undertaking on this particular screenplay. I really have enjoyed it a lot. I really enjoyed taking a month to study in great detail the grammar of the story of the movie. And these notebooks I have are invaluable. They're loaded with, from my point of view, amazing stuff. Some of, the stuff that really inspires, that really makes me want to make this. The grammar of this movie is in these notebooks. And I loved that stage. Then, trying to get control. I want to know the outcome. I want to control the outcome on the audience. One of the most important things for me is to be able to convey certain ideas, certain thoughts and emotions. And maybe it's just my analytical mind or the type of person I am, but wanting to control that and make sure it happens is something that excites me, and therefore the logic stage is all about that. And even if the writing goes off in different directions and I don't lock down every aspect of everything, which is beyond me anyway, I have uncovered a lot of understanding about the movie I'm making and why I'm making it and what I would like to, effect I would like it to have, and how to go about getting it. So using this Trivium has been a great learning experience, and specifically a real inspiration around this movie itself, the way I've approached it. So I have yet to write the last 10 minutes in my treatment synopsis outline, and so I got to that point and kind of put it down and went into other areas. So that's waiting for me, and as soon as I'm bold enough to do that, then I really look forward to getting this first draft done, because I've got so much behind it because of this. So then briefly, for non-screenwriters, if you have even listened to this podcast and you're at this point, the Trivium really is how to learn anything. So it's simply a way of structuring subjects for, easy learning. So anything you approach, any new subject you approach, need not be intimidating in the least, because all you have to do is start with the grammar. Understand what is the vocabulary of this subject. Many different subjects, one of the barriers of entry for the mind tends to be not understanding words, and somehow that, becomes this insurmountable issue. All it is learning the words, learning what they mean, getting the grammar of a subject down, and then proceed to start to understand the logic of how those pieces fit together. Nothing is too hard to learn when you're able to break it down in this way. So the Trivium is a really powerful tool in one's arsenal. And it's a fun way to write a screenplay, I have found. Of course, I have yet to complete it. I've kind of jumped the gun, and I'm recording this podcast sharing a process I haven't completed, but I've completed enough, and I will finish it in this light, and I'm having fun. It's inspiring. Okay, so that's this episode. The website is cinemaandthepsyche.com. My email is matt@cinemaandthepsyche.com. I'd love to hear any thoughts, criticisms, or questions over email. We're on, all the social media things, if you feel like following any of those. Probably a comment on the iTunes store would be really cool. But, whatever. That's all just stuff. I just hope that you are getting inspired by the information, and that it might be aiding your process or your appreciation of yourself and cinema. So I will formulate the next episode, and I look forward to delivering that to you. Thanks so much for tuning in. Until next time.